now. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming on a Sunday at 5 p.m. So my name is Osili Sindawambongo. I'm an activist, I'm an artist, I'm a campaigner, and I have my organization called Lubiko, translated, it's in Lingala. It means you could say kind of hope. It means overcoming, and I gave it that name because of the nature of the organization. We run campaigns on HIV and AIDS. And we've done our first campaign last year, so we try to raise awareness about HIV specifically in the African community, in the Congolese community. I forgot to mention also, I'm also from Congo, and also I'm also a person living with HIV. I was born HIV positive. So, and I met Rachel online, who I've told her my story, and I try to give this platform to young people, to women, to men, mostly from the African community, from Black community, to really try to engage and try to educate everybody on the topic on health issues that we don't normally talk about. So today, as you may know, the title of the session is Misdiagnosis and also lupus. So we have on the platform Rachel Hall. I don't normally introduce everything or introduce my guests because I would like them to introduce themselves and say who they are and what they do, and then we begin our session there. So Rachel, you have the mic.
Hello, everybody. So for those of you that don't know who I am, my name's Rachel Hall. I'm 31 years old. So I was diagnosed with lupus when I was 21. So I've actually gone past the 10-year mark now, systemic lupus. Since then, I've tried to use social media in particular to just try and raise awareness about lupus. I've met a lot of people through social media, such as Instagram, Twitter, people that are really scared when they first get diagnosed and need someone to talk to. That's the people that I usually love helping, because I'd never heard of lupus when I was diagnosed. I think I've briefly remember it being mentioned in an episode of America's Next Top Model, and that was about it. I didn't have a clue that it could be fatal. I didn't have a clue it could affect your organs. I didn't know anything about it. I also like to show people that there are ways that you can still work. There are ways that you can still continue with life. I've been with my partner throughout this whole time I've been diagnosed, so it's possible to have a relationship. I like to just show people, everything's not lost the moment that you get a diagnosis like lupus. So today we felt like, after talking in particular, misdiagnosis seemed to be like a really good topic to start with, especially because lupus in particular, a lot of people are diagnosed wrong in the beginning, and it also takes a really long time to be diagnosed. So hopefully you'll all learn a bit of something today, and anyone that has logged in that has lupus will be able to feel like they can relate. So if you want to chip in at the end, feel free. But that's what today's about, really.
Yeah, so we're going to start with a presentation. We normally give 10-15 minutes to give a presentation.
Yeah.
Then we have a discussion, and then towards the end we'll have a platform where everybody can start asking their questions that they may have during the discussion. Would you like me to share the presentation?
No, that's fine. I can share. Yeah, I can share it.
I'll give you to be a host then.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Make host. Yeah, I saw done.
Okay, so just a presentation briefly, just to introduce what we'll be talking about today. So this is just about lupus. I will say a bit about what is lupus, and why are patients misdiagnosed in particular with this particular illness. So if we just forward through. Okay, so just a couple. Can everyone see the screen, by the way? If you can't, maybe just put a thumb down or something. I don't know. But yeah, hopefully you can all see it. So just a few things about lupus. Lupus is a systemic autoimmune disease. So what that basically means is, normally your immune system, your white blood cells, they help protect you from infections, from anything that could potentially be making you unwell. They will come together and they will battle that away. The problem is when you have have lupus is it's continuously battling even when you're not ill, which makes you ill. So basically your body constantly feels like it has to defend something and there's nothing to defend. So in the end, it's basically attacking healthy tissues, healthy organs, because it keeps on thinking that basically everything in your body is foreign and it needs to attack it. So systemic means it can attack everything. That's what systemic lupus means. It means basically it affects everything. So that could be your joints, your skin, your organs, your brain function. You know, anything it can attack. So at present there is no cure for lupus, and at present lupus can still be fatal, especially once it starts affecting the organs. So I just put in a little point here that it was only 50 years ago, you know, that most patients would die within 10 years of being diagnosed, simply because just not enough was known about lupus. You can see here that it mainly affects women. 90% of patients are women. Black and the Asian community are disproportionately affected by lupus. You usually see a specialist called a rheumatologist, and they are the people that will help you throughout your lupus journey. So one of the things that's really interesting and what we'll be focusing on today is the fact that still on average, it takes nearly 6 years for a person to be diagnosed with lupus after they start having the initial symptoms. So just to let you know, I started experiencing severe joint pain when I was 19. I can vividly remember actually being out, and I'd probably been at a barbecue for about an hour when I just started feeling this horrible pain in my legs in particular. And literally from that moment onwards, I just started every day experiencing swelling and this awful pain in my legs that started moving to my back, my hands. And I didn't get formally diagnosed with lupus till I was 21. So for about 2 years, I was experiencing pain, a rash, all loss of weight, all these things that I couldn't explain. And then 2 years later, I was diagnosed with lupus. So what does lupus look like? So I wanted to just show the big picture in the middle there. You might recognize a few faces. We've got Nick Cannon, we've got Selena Gomez, we've got Seal, we've got Tony Braxton. All four of these people have been diagnosed with lupus. The lupuses are a bit different. Nick Cannon and Selena is actually quite similar. It's affected both of their kidneys. Apart from, as you can see in the picture at the bottom, Selena has had to undergo a kidney transplant because of how damaged her kidney was. As you can see, it typically affects the skin as well, a discoid lupus. Sorry, if you can mute anyone who's not on mute, that would be really helpful. Thank you. And then we've just got pictures as well of how badly the arthritis can affect someone's hands. Raynaud's as well is something that can come along with lupus. So it really varies. On the outside, someone like Nick Cannon, for example, could look very healthy, but he has severe kidney issues. He's constantly in and out of hospital. And it just shows you that lupus doesn't have a typical look. Yeah. So how is lupus diagnosed? So this is probably the biggest question. I'm a part of a lot of groups on Facebook, for example, and a lot of the times you'll get someone that will pop into the group and say, I've looked at lupus, I think I have it, but my tests are coming back negative. So there are a lot of tests involved in diagnosing lupus. That can include blood tests, urine tests, biopsies, even MRIs. Unfortunately, there's not one test that can determine if you have lupus. Many people with lupus tend to have a certain antibody in their blood, which can make it a little bit easier for it to be diagnosed, but typically not. You know, that you can't say it's everyone. Some people will still have a negative blood test, but they do have lupus. So usually they say there's about 6 to 8 criteria that you have to fulfill before they start thinking that it could be lupus. So that can include something to do with your white blood cells. It can include if they find any protein or blood in your urine indicating kidney issues. It can obviously include how your skin is being affected, your hair is being affected. But the other issue with this all is that lupus can mimic other conditions. So one of the things that I wanted to point out is before I was diagnosed with lupus, I was informally diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. I was actually...
Today, they are doing about lupus. Huh? Lupus. Today, they're talking about lupus.
Only you can mute people, Rachel. Sorry, because you're the host.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Disease.
I don't.
The diagnosis,
I was like,
you know, they say
that.
still have
So
it.
just mute him.
There's many people have
okay.
it, but it attacks different organs.
Yes, correct.
Sometimes, you know.
I had to ask to unmute. Oh no. I think I did it. Sorry, I've never had to mute before. Okay, sorry about that. But basically, yeah, it can mimic other conditions, which is really the big thing. So I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, mainly because my first symptoms was the joint pain, joint swelling, joint pain, very consistent with arthritis pain. That was my main symptoms. It wasn't actually till later down the line, I would say probably after about 18 months, that I started experiencing other symptoms such as hair loss, weight loss, a rash all over my body. Obviously, I was very fatigued, but that can come in rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. All these other things started happening, which is why it started to be like, maybe it's not actually rheumatoid arthritis. So I've just got a little quote here from the Lupus UK website, which shows that somebody else that also experienced the same thing. They said, like many other people, I was diagnosed initially with rheumatoid arthritis because of the sudden and severe joint pain. The lupus diagnosis didn't actually come until about 3 years later that they found out actually they given the incorrect diagnosis. So, common diseases that lupus can mimic or it overlaps with lupus, I've written quite a few, but I just wanted to highlight this graphic here that shows you how rheumatoid arthritis, for example, and lupus can overlap. So the joint pain, the low-grade fever, the fatigue, and the swelling is very common in both conditions. And just to say, you can also have rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. That is very common as well. But they both have joint pain, they both have fatigue, they both have swelling. What tends to happen with rheumatoid arthritis is, as with normal arthritis, you can actually have joint damage. So you could be permanently damaged, and as you can see here, prone to dislocations, prone to deformity. Well, they've put deformities, and typically with rheumatoid arthritis, the symptoms tend to be worse in the morning and tend to ease throughout the day, where lupus, you are in pain all day. Basically, you'll wake up in pain, you'll go to bed in pain. It doesn't tend to ease up throughout the day. Also, lupus can come with other things like hair loss, also being sensitive to sunlight, which can cause flare-ups. That doesn't typically happen in rheumatoid arthritis. But as you can see, there's an ongoing list. There's probably even more than the ones that I've mentioned of diseases that are more sometimes well known. So straight away a doctor, especially a GP, might think, okay, you know what, I'm more familiar with a rheumatoid arthritis, for example, so I think it's rheumatoid arthritis. This is why it's so important to actually see a specialist, see a rheumatologist, try and get the best healthcare advice that you can, whether that's a first or second opinion on what you have, because really and truly, as it shows here, it can be a multitude of different illnesses that you could possibly have. So what should you do? So one thing that I wanted to highlight was a GP is not a lupus specialist. It is very unlikely, especially with your initial appointments, that your GP is going to straight away think lupus. They do not typically understand it. It's not something that they go into too much depth into. As I said, they might look at your joints and straight away start thinking arthritis. I know initially, just to give a little antidote, I know initially before I was diagnosed with lupus and I started getting the rash, I went to see a GP. It wasn't my normal GP. They just gave me someone else. I think they were standing in. And I said to them, you know, I'm ill all the time. I'm getting infections all the time. I've now got this rash. Like, I think something's like seriously wrong with me. And he was like, honestly, what has a rash got to do with an infection? He was like, you've clearly just got eczema. And I've never had eczema in my life. So I was a bit like, okay, it seemed very strange to me. But that's just give you an example of, he can only look at the surface. He had no understanding of lupus. So he just went by what he typically knows of. So I just think it really is important to always try to see a specialist, especially if you're in the UK. In London, there is a lupus clinic that you can go to. If you're not referred, you may have to pay, but it would be worth it if you seriously have a concern that you think you have lupus. I also wanted to highlight that there are different types of lupus, and that is again something that your GP may not understand. That you could just have discoid lupus, which means just affecting the skin, just affecting your hair. You could have a drug-induced lupus, so a certain medication you've been taking has caused you to go into a lupus flare. You know, there's so many different types. For me, I would say always try to get a second opinion, especially if you feel like the first thing that they've told you doesn't feel correct or doesn't feel like that's actually what you might have. So yeah, that was basically my brief presentation. Obviously we'll have time for questions later, but yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much for that. I will just ask if you can put me back the host again, because some people will be coming back.
Okay, so let me stop share. This is where now I have to be technical. So
yeah, it's just you go on my name and you there's like a more.
Okay.
So there's like a more button, and then you click on it, and then it'll put make host. It has a drop down menu that says.
Oh yeah, okay. Yep, see that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
No worries.
So I'm going to start with 10 questions that I have for you.
Yeah.
The first question is, because we spoke before prior to organizing this event, and you attend support groups, as you mentioned as well in today's discussion. Can you please tell us, how did attending these support groups help you?
Yeah, so for me, just to say, there are various support groups. I suppose I've always been a bit apprehensive about going to a face-to-face group, even though I know there are loads. Even my hospital, so I go Guy's Hospital in London, I know that they organise their own support groups around there as well. But for me, online has been my biggest support. So I think I remember joining Twitter so many years ago, but I partly joined because I saw that people were having a conversation about lupus through a hashtag on Twitter. And just being able to see, there are other people going through the same thing as you. There are people that have had it longer than you. So you know, okay, it's not, going to end my life tomorrow. There is a chance that I'm going to be able to lead a normal life. To be able to ask questions just about, you've been told you're going to go on a new medication, you read the side effects and it sounds awful. Just having that group just to go to and say, okay, who else is on this? What's your experience? Getting advice like that. Honestly, second to none. Like I don't think I'd be where I am now without initially turning to other people for support and getting support from those groups.
And my second question is, what has been challenging for you whilst working and living with lupus?
I think it's the fact that lupus is very, well, for me anyway, it's very much depends if I'm in a flare or not. So if I'm not flaring, I can basically be fine. Especially on the outside, you look at me and just think, just a normal.
Can you please explain flaring? Some people
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah. So flaring just basically means when your lupus is really active. So when I previously mentioned before, when your immune system goes into overdrive and starts attacking things that aren't there, that means it's in a flare, basically. That's what we call it. It's flaring up. It's going all overboard. So when it's not flaring, well, for me, when I'm on medication, for example, and I'm not in a flare and it feels controlled, then, you know, I could usually go about my normal day. The only thing I probably still experience is I get quite tired quite quickly. But apart from that, you know, I'm still pretty much like, okay, how Rachel used to be over 10 years ago. But when I'm going through that flare up, I cannot do the things I could do before. So work, there are days when I've gone into work perfectly fine that morning, and by the afternoon my joints are swollen up. I'm knackered. I feel like I could literally just collapse on the floor in the middle of the office. I would say for me, I've always been very upfront with every company I've worked for. So even I started a new job in January, I told them about my health condition in my interview, because for me it was a thing of, if I didn't feel like they would be able to understand it, or I didn't feel they were able to put things in place, then it wouldn't be the job for me. So I've been very blessed enough to have jobs that have been very understanding. I've had 2 jobs now that I've literally told my managers I'm tired, and they've allowed me to go sleep in the staff room for 2 hours. It's things like that, like just them
Wow.
understanding, when you've got a flare, this is what happens. She's a good worker. We don't want to lose her. I know every employer is not like that, unfortunately. But I think the main thing is communicating. Don't feel afraid to just tell them how you're feeling. Don't be afraid to just say, this is a really bad day for me. Maybe I should work from home. Anything like that, if it's possible. If you're in a physically demanding job that you've realized you can no longer do. So I used to do retail when I was 19. That's a job I probably couldn't do now. Being on my feet all day, moving up and down all day, that wouldn't be good for my body. So it's also understanding what is actually good for you, what you're able to do, where's your limit, basically. So that's a good thing.
Thank you for that. The first question is, of course, the misdiagnosis, the big title today. And you've mentioned you've gone to your doctor's appointment, and the doctor literally had to Google what lupus is. And how did that make you feel?
So you're just referring to a time again, especially with GPs. What I don't know if everyone's GP surgery is like this, but mine, you don't always see the same doctor. They've probably got 4 or 5 different GPs, and you book an appointment, but you usually don't know who you're going to see. So I remember I had one, and I had quite a bad chest infection. So I came in and I was just like, I've got a really bad chest infection. I don't know what to do. Should I stop? I think it was maybe talking about my steroids. And he was like, oh, what do you have? And I was like, my notes is right in front of you. But okay, I told him I've got lupus. And literally in front of me, he typed in lupus to look up on Google what lupus was. And for me, it's scary to think that there's still a lot of health professionals, the initial frontline people that are meant to be supporting you, that don't have enough of an understanding about your condition. And also, I just think it's quite rude to even just show how much you don't know, just Google it right in front of me. So yeah, it can really dishearten you. But it's just a reminder that, you know, everyone won't understand it. It's very important to understand your own condition. It's very important to know what your medications you're on. It's very important to know how your own body works when it comes to lupus, because a lot of people won't know it, won't understand it. And unfortunately, sometimes it will be down to you to explain it, even to a health professional. So yeah, that's what I would say.
So what if that's never happened to me as a patient myself, who goes to the doctors quite regularly? So what advice can you give to us if we, God forbid, but if anybody in this platform, you know, there may be, I don't know what people take, but you know, they come across as well, that they're going for an illness, they come across the same experience as you. Do you take any actions? Do you take it to your another person that's in charge or not?
Yeah, so for me, I've definitely told my surgery, anyway, they know me very well now, but I've definitely told my surgery if I've seen a doctor that I do not want to see again. I think it's, again, you're the patient. It's very much about you. It's very much making sure that you feel comfortable, you feel safe, you feel understood. Do not be afraid to tell whoever's in charge, please put a note to say, I do not want to see that doctor. When you call up for an appointment, check who they're going to book you in with and say, actually, I would prefer not to see that person. You want to make sure that when you have your 10, 15-minute appointment, you're getting the best care that you can get. So please don't be afraid to speak up. If you're nervous doing something face to face, I would say send an email, get someone else to send an email or call in on your behalf. But make sure that you always get your point across about how you're feeling.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarity. I think so. Yeah. It's very important that you know that this is not right, because some people feel too shy to say. They will just accept it, like, okay, because it's a doctor and therefore, you know, they know what is right. So my next question is, do you think some doctors, because of the title that they may have, would feel the obligation to give you certain information just because of the title that they may have?
Oh yeah, definitely. Again, I feel like I'm really having a dig at GPs, but I'm not, honestly. They can be very helpful. But the only reason why I use GPs is because I have to compare them to when I go to see my rheumatologist, who obviously understands my condition as much as they can. But when I go to the GP, sometimes they would just say the most random things. And I'm like, yeah, I have had it for like 10 years. So I'm about to see a doctor and they'll just like, oh, you've got lupus. Like, yeah, you know, you need to have a lot of rest. Or, you know, you need to stay out of sunlight. I'm like, yeah, thanks. Like, I know this already. They kind of just, they've learned something new. So they just want to prove that they know it. So again, it's just take it with like a pinch of salt, basically. But yeah,
it's showing me, I don't know why it's doing it. It's showing that we have 10 minutes to the meeting. So we'll keep it as quick as possible. I wanted to say, do you stay away from any particular food that you have to eat?
Do you know what? This is a really difficult question. It's something that people ask me all the time. I've tried a lot of different things to try and manage my lupus, including I was plant-based for about 1.5 years. There were some pros to it, 100%. I would say during that time, majority of that time, I wasn't flaring as much. I did feel it was a bit more controlled, but I still ended up having a flare. Actually, I ended up having a really bad flare whilst I was still plant-based, that lasted for about 4 or 5 months. So for me personally, no, there's nothing I would suggest stay away from. But I would say everyone's different. And there's some people who have gone plant-based and swear by it and say they don't flare at all. There's obviously a lot of people that stay away from alcohol. Probably alcohol is not the best thing to have when you're on loads of medication and stuff. But I do drink. But again, if you want to still have it a bit more control, but we don't have as much alcohol, you know, I would say try and have as much as a balanced, healthy diet that you can. But don't be afraid to test things out, because as I said, some people might go plant-based and never have a flare again. Some people might stay away from foods that are counted as inflammatory and feel like it will really help their joints. So test it out, try it. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, you tried it, and that's that. But there's a lot of books you can read and find out more information.
My next question is, how can we ensure our communities, African communities, become more educated when they are particularly facing a health issue?
Do you know what, that's a really hard one. I think me and you had the discussion, didn't we? That we were just saying, that Caribbean and African communities, I think sometimes we're not as forward about our health conditions, and not as forward, especially to each other, about what we're going through. So I think that's literally the first step. We have to start talking about things. You know, it's great that you're out here, you speak about HIV, you're literally here saying, this is who I am, this is what I've got, it's like you said, it's not a death sentence. Like, people are still think, oh my gosh, I've got HIV, that means I'm just gonna die soon or something. It's because they're not being educated. We're not sharing our experiences enough. Having something like this where, you know, my friends are logging in, my family's logging in, people that I speak to on social media are logging in. This is what we need to do more of. We need to have that communication. We need to speak more about what's happening in our lives. We need to share how we're coping. We need to share what medications are on. It shouldn't be a taboo. I think we need to get away from the thinking of, oh, because I talk about lupus, that means I'm claiming my lupus, and that means I love having lupus. That is such a strange thought that some people have. No, it means I've accepted that I have it, and I want to support others that might be going through the same thing. So yeah, I would say it's very important to don't be afraid to talk about it. Don't be afraid to join the support groups. Don't be afraid to log in online and have a chat with people. Yeah, we just need to communicate more.
And lastly, if this Zoom does not stop behaving,
Yeah.
the last question is, what are some of the dangers of believing in God but rejecting treatments that,
Oh.
especially those in a faith Black communities, you know, sometimes we think that we don't want to take medication. So what advice would you give to those people who are within the faith? You know, we are Christian ourselves. I've come across many people that are HIV positive. They literally say God will save them. I mean, I'm a Christian myself. I take my medication, but they just think that, you know, there's nothing else but only the faith that would save and not treatment.
This is good because I remember me and my friend had a conversation about this a few years ago. Obviously, I'm a Christian, my mum's a pastor. So I definitely believe in God. But one thing that I believe is that he has got me to where I am. So what that means is he's put me in front of the right doctors. He's put me in front of the right medication. He's put me in the right jobs. As I mentioned earlier, I've always felt like I'm blessed in the situations that I've been in. I felt like he's never put me somewhere that I can't handle. And even when I've really thought, I really can't take this, I'm crying, I'm a grown woman climbing in my own parents' bed or climbing in my sister's bed because I can't take the pain that I'm in. He's always been like, you are going to pass this. And I've always been able to pass this. So I myself has never just said, God, heal me now, or, you know, you're not doing what you said you was going to do. I've always just asked for strength. I've always just asked him to put me in the right place. I feel like the fact that I connect with so much people, all of these things are happening for a reason. As I get older, I'm starting to see it's all about my purpose in life. And, you know, yes, lupus can hinder me from quite a few things, but I just think, again, definitely take medications. Your medication's there for a reason. But you can be talking to God at the same time. You can be asking him for a miracle. You can be asking him to help you, to make you a testimony. That's fine. But he's put you in front of the right medication. He's put you in front of the right doctor. Also bear that in mind. He's making sure that you're staying on this earth. So take what you can.
Okay, before anything, this Zoom meeting is coming to an end. I don't know because I cancelled all my payments for Zoom. So basically, either we go to a different platform that's on Skype, that I can easily send people a link, because I think we haven't finished and people have so many questions. So everybody stay online. As in, I'm going to send you the link to my Skype so you can send it to everybody and then we can just join to there. So I'm just going to stop recording. I'm so sorry, everybody, because I don't want to end this conversation now.
Okay. Hold on. Did you say Skype?
Yeah. Does everyone have? If not Skype, there's Google Meeting. I can send it now.
Skype. I think I have Skype actually.
Yeah. I'm so sorry, everybody, because it's literally closing like 2 minutes. So I'm going to leave now. We're going to still have this video, and then I'll send everybody the link now.